Memorial Day is about honoring the fallen, the heroes of America who have given the ultimate sacrifice in our defense and in defense of freedom.
Freedom is not free. People sacrifice their lives for the freedoms that we call free here in America. So to remember those is to honor those. Greater love has no one than this, than to lay one's life down for his friends.
We must remember and honor our fallen with overwhelming aloha, for they are our heroes.
Take time to understand what each of these plaques represent. Their lives, their families, the stories, the campaigns they fought in, Iwo Jima, Tinian, Guam, Midway, Afghanistan, Iraq. There are so many different campaigns, so many battles have been fought in defense of us.
If we look to the answer as to why for so many years we achieved so much, prospered as no other people on earth, it was because here in this land we unleashed the energy and individual genius of man to a greater extent than has ever been done before. Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth. The price for this freedom at times has been high, but we have never been unwilling to pay that price. Those who say that we're in a time when there are no heroes, they just don't know where to look. The sloping hills of Arlington National Cemetery, with its row upon row of simple white markers bearing crosses or stars of David, they add up to only a tiny fraction of the price that has been paid for our freedom. Each one of those markers is a monument to the kind of hero I spoke of earlier. Their lives ended in places called Belleau Wood, the Argonne, Omaha Beach, Salerno, and halfway around the world on Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Pork Chop Hill, the Chosin Reservoir, and in 100 rice paddies and jungles of a place called Vietnam. Under one such marker lies a young man, Martin Treptow, who left his job in a small-town barber shop in 1917 to go to France with the famed Rainbow Division. There on the Western Front, he was killed trying to carry a message between battalions under heavy artillery fire. We're told that on his body was found a diary. On the flyleaf, under the heading, "My Pledge," he had written these words: "America must win this war. Therefore I will work, I will save, I will sacrifice, I will endure. I will fight cheerfully and do my utmost as if the issue of the whole struggle depended on me alone." We must realize that no arsenal or no weapon in the arsenals of the world is so formidable as the will and moral courage of free men and women. It is a weapon our adversaries in today's world do not have. It is a weapon that we as Americans do have. Let that be understood by those who practice terrorism and prey upon their neighbors. As for the enemies of freedom, those who are potential adversaries, they will be reminded that peace is the highest aspiration of the American people. We will negotiate for it, sacrifice for it. We will not surrender for it now or ever. We are Americans.
I lived through the internet revolution. I'm sure some of the people in the room did. Some of you have children who grew up with the internet where information is widely accessible. Maybe they forgot the bad old days. But information used to be proprietary. Used to be if you wanted a stock market feed, you had to set up a circuit to the stock market. If you then wanted an Associated Press feed, you had to create a circuit to the Associated Press. It was a bit of a mess. And it was slow. It seemed like it might be fast enough, but you couldn't watch a cat video anytime you wanted to like you could now. The interesting thing was that it didn't really seem so slow. It seemed like it was actually pretty good. New technology always kind of seems pretty good. What you don't see is what's not happening because the technology can't do it. And it was siloed, so data was locked up in different archives, and if you wanted to access that data, you had to come up with some way to access it. I don't know if many of you know what that circular object is there that you could hang up in your garden to keep crows away, but a company called America Online used to ship these things to everybody, and they were trying to get us onto their network. They were a data provider that existed pre-internet. And if you had a friend, and their marketing was all about how you could reach all your friends on it because they had this tremendous reach, but they had competitors. And if I was on CompuServe and you were on AOL, there was some way we could email each other. Good luck if you could figure it out. We don't live in those days anymore though, right? Today, we have no difficulty exchanging information. If I want to send you an email, I don't know what internet service provider you have. I don't have to care. I just need your email address and it just works. And if you've ever looked at the marketing information that you might see from an internet service provider, they'll never say, we have all the websites you want. Right? That would be a nonsensical pitch. Why? Because every internet provider has the same reach. Information just works, and now they have to compete on service, on speed, on how well they fit you, not what information you can reach, because everybody can reach everything. Boy, wouldn't it be great if payments worked that way. So today, money is locked up in distinct systems just like information used to be.
Spaceships.
What we want to do is we want to make money move the way information moves. And that's obviously a huge task. And we started on enterprise international payments. But the vision is the Internet of Value. The vision is money moves the way the Internet moves information. The vision is payment networks interoperate the way data networks operate. The vision is payment networks are as easy to access as information networks are. So that separated into two buckets. The bucket that we started on first, RippleNet, was an enterprise payment system for financial institutions. They were not ready to make the step to open networks, just like moving to the internet would have been pretty radical in the early days of the internet. And so we started building an enterprise payment network that would provide that level of interoperability. But that's not going to handle the developers. For that, we need a network that's open. We need something that's truly open source and accessible like the internet is. So on the enterprise side, we built this payment network called RippleNet using XRP to settle where that makes sense. That solves is having to pre-position money where you need to make payments. So for example, without some sort of a cryptocurrency solution, to make a payment into the Philippines, you'd have to have Philippine pesos sitting in the Philippines. Now, if you want to make payments on Monday and maybe Friday is a holiday somewhere, you might have to move that money on Thursday or even earlier, and you have to sort of figure out how much money you need, and you have to leave it sitting somewhere. What RippleNet does with XRP is the sender can exchange their sending currency, say US dollars for XRP, send the XRP on the XRP ledger, and buy Philippine pesos precisely when they need them. Ripple recently announced a partnership with MoneyGram. MoneyGram is a remittance company, probably the second largest. And they're using XRP to provide liquidity on demand in countries like Mexico rather than having to pre-place large amounts of Mexican pesos.
So much for bringing us back to the digital currencies, because I think it's important. The principle that I set out earlier on number one, financial stability and avoidance of risks, but number two, allowing the innovation and not stifling it, I think remains. I would distinguish between cryptocurrencies a la bitcoins, which certainly can be analyzed differently depending on where they are reviewed. There are places in the world where they are regarded as assets. There are places in the world where they're regarded as currencies. There are places in the world where they're regarded as securities. So there's a whole chaos of the proper analytical framework for such thing. But in the main, what we have observed recently is that it has been a fairly speculative and highly volatile product, and one that is not sufficiently large to actually threaten stability and be a hindrance to the proper transmission of monetary policy. I would distinguish that from the stable coins, which are, in my view, a different type of animal, and which probably have a different future. But that being said, I believe that stable coins, whether they are the Libras of this world or central bank digital currencies, they have to be in compliance with all the rules and regulations that apply to the activity. So I'm not overly concerned about, is it a bank? I think it's far more important to focus on the activity that is conducted by those groupings to make sure that there is full compliance with the regulations that apply to those products. And in that vein, I would suggest that anything that protects against money laundering, against the financing of terrorism, against financial stability, against proper transmission of monetary policy should be paramount when assessing whether those products should be allowed to prosper in our region of the world and possibly in other places, which is why I was really pleased to see that Benoît Cœuré of the ECB was tasked by the G7 to actually look at those digital currencies, consult as broadly as possible, and come back with some findings as to, its appropriateness or not.
With Mr. Foster, he and I have had a lot of conversations about digital currencies. Jay Powell just answered our letter on the idea of a digital token. And I think the concept's a little misunderstood. If we want a digital future in finance and we want to protect the preeminence of the American dollar as a reserve currency, this idea of a digital token is an important concept. And it's not anything except allowing our government to facilitate a blockchain transaction process legally in the future. We have Visa debit, we have MasterCard, we have SWIFT, FedWire, the ACH system, all true, all have private sector participation in them and government participation. But this idea that there's a new rail created that's a blockchain rail that both bank and non-banks can participate in to settle transactions through a token, it's coming our way faster than we like, perhaps faster than the 5-year time frame you outlined. So I do think it's an important issue for the FSOC to continue to consider, and also to have Treasury's view on, independent of what your agent over at the Federal Reserve thinks as you implement Article 1's power on currency.
Look like for leveraging the system?
Yeah, that's I was in the back of the room listening to the previous panel, and custody came up, and when custody comes up, I immediately think, well, then the next logical step is obviously prime brokerage services and large banks offering a suite of products in crypto at some point that mimics what they do in FX and equities and commodities. I think until we solve custody, we can't solve that second problem. And I do think once we solve that second problem, then these markets will begin to look like other markets. Until then, really your number one place for liquidity is the exchanges, and the credit risk that you want to take there, or the credit risk that they want to take with you. So.
blockchain and digital currency is a part of our future, both in financial services and in the broader commercial market. And I would like to see in the future the dollar have its own token and blockchain method of payment.
Even if you had, and I know it's all kind of chicken and egg, but even if you had the prime brokerage model and you wanted to offer leverage to your clients, that means that you now have to go out there and source a bunch of Bitcoin or Ether or XRP, and that's not easy to do, right? I think one of the advantages that we have as a company is the fact that we sit on 60 billion XRP. So the day that Goldman wants to open up their trading desk, they don't have to go find, XRP. They just give me a call, which is nice. I think it's, and interest rates in this market are pretty expensive, so it's a nice recurring revenue stream one day.